Son. Oh yes, Sochi does love the red color. It seems that he just can't get enough of it, Kushina said while Naruto rubbed the back of his head. Kushina then shook her head and with a sigh instructed Yuri to lay down in the swirl. Yuri, nervously, laid down on the cold ground while Naruto shook his head of his doubts and placed the crystal on Yuri's stomach. Yuri, I will protect you. I swear it. Akatsuki will never get their hands on you, Naruto said and Yuri just smiled with a nod while she closed her eyes. Alright Sochi, we have to do the hand signs perfectly and in unison. Anything less won't work. Are you ready? Kushina asked and Naruto nodded as the two quickly flashed through their hand signs while Yuri kept her eyes closed before she heard the sounds of hands slamming together. Fuinjutsu. Jumyo Sechiku no Jutsu, sealing technique. Bonding the two lives technique, Naruto and Kushina said in the same time before they both placed their hands on Yuri's chest. Yuri twitched, but other than that remained unmoving. She sighed and everyone heard a low roar as the Sandy's chakra flew into the air. It swirled around before it was slammed into Yuri. Yuri growled and flinched from a bit of pain, but she resisted any grimace that would appear on her face before the same seal as Naruto's tetragram seal appeared on her stomach then faded. It was all a quick instant, but the jewel dropped to the ground, harmless. Shouldn't she be waking up now? Naruto asked worriedly while Kushina sighed. She patted Naruto's shoulder trying to ease his worry as she laid her head on his shoulder. It'll be alright. It took me a bit of time to wake up as well, but we both did it instead of 5 people and we have more chakra than them so she should be waking up right about now, Kushina said and Yuri opened her eyes while she glanced around the room and leaned up. How are you feeling? Naruto asked and Yuri just smiled. No different than I was when I was myself. Well, I think that's a good thing anyway, Yuri said while Naruto smiled and patted her shoulder. It is. Trust me on that much, Naruto said to her and Yuri just nodded with a small smile on her face while Kushina helped her to her feet and the three walked out of the room. Konohagakure, 1 week later. Tsunade smiled at the report given by Hinoken, but also in slight anger. She had read the report that one of the Akatsuki went for them, but Naruto drove him off. They had also met with the Mizukage who was interested in forming an alliance, but not only that. They had also spoke of escorting a few people who would want to be known as clansmen to the Uzumaki clan. It would help Konoha's economy as well as their political structure, but also it might even have Tsunade meeting more family on her grandmother's side. It wouldn't be that bad. I guess naturally they would want to be around then. Kushina told me in the report that she had been training them so I guess there would be no need for the academy in their opinion. I wonder if I should test them against the others then that should work out just fine, Tsunade said before she sighed. Before she could work with Kiri, she had to work on Kumo with their matters first as they had things to talk about. She was hoping that she could bring at least 2 or 3 of Hinoken with her. Maybe Naruto and Yugao or something like that. She just needed a few of them along. For some reasons, she felt safe with them around. Tsunade-sama, I have relayed Kiri your message of an alliance. I have also been informed that Sakura-san is currently heading the hospital under her shift. Also the council wants to speak with you before the members of Hinoken arrive, Shizune said coming through the door and Tsunade nodded her head. She rubbed her temples lightly and leaned back in her chair. What do those old fools want? Don't they know that I have more important shit to worry about than their shit? Tsunade asked while Shizune just nodded and rubbed the back of her head sheepishly. Well, at least Naruto-kun is coming back and so are the others, Shizune said while Tsunade just shrugged her shoulders and stood to her feet. I can only wonder who the brat is bringing. Hopefully no one troublesome or I swear this is going to be a headache walking, Tsunade said and Shizune just laughed lightly before Tsunade opened the door. Also has, the word stopped. Tsunade asked and Shizune's smile descended slightly while she clutched her notepad. Tsunade glanced towards Shizune and the secretary to the Godime just shook her head. Well, actually it's rather jumbled. Some people are making bets as to who can figure out Naruto-kun's contract. Also a word through the vine is that a few wish to sell the contract to the highest bidder. Some just acknowledge it while others think that Naruto-kun lied at the funeral to cover his own skin. They think that they deserve to know as Konoha has a record of every single contract that people have signed. Especially the Toad, Slug and Snake, which I might add that Jiraiya-sama is still shocked that Naruto ended said contract, but upon learning why then he's looking for answers. Answers that he is sure to try and get from Naruto-kun and his team, Shizune said and Tsunade just sighed with a nod. No doubt this is why the council wants to see me. Naturally I gave Naruto and his team the authority to deny taking orders from anyone but me, however if people pester them then I'm sure that the brat will either kill him or send them to his summon, which is the same anyway, Tsunade said with a heavy sigh as she closed the door with Shizune following her out. Konoha border. Are you sure that they aren't going to attack us once they see us? I mean I'd rather not have Yukimaru killed because of me, Gurren said while the others continued to walk along the ground. Everyone just snickered at her while Naruto shook his head. Alright, we hate Orochimaru as much as the next person, but I don't think Ba-chan will go that far. She at least knows how to be fair at least. Not to mention that she'll be more than willing to listen if it's from us. You need to stop worrying so much. Also Yuri, how are you holding up? Naruto asked while Yuri just smiled and skipped along the road. She looked back to her Uzumaki brother and grinned. Holding up just fine, Ni-chan. Also, Sanbi-chan has been silent for the past week. Now who's worrying too much? Yuri asked smiling and Naruto just rolled his eyes along with Yura. Yuri, that's enough out of you. We're about to go to Nisama's home village. On your best behavior, Yura criticized while Yuri nodded. Yes mom, she teased while Yura just glared evenly at her. Naruto just patted her before they all noticed the large Konoha walls. Wow, so that's it. Ni-chan's village, Yuri said as she ran up to the gates with the others. Since they were escorting friends and relatives then Hinoken had to arrive in person and just couldn't waltz into the village like they usual could. It didn't work that way. Well, let's go and get you guys signed in, Naruto said and everyone nodded as Naruto walked up to the counter. Yo Izumo, Kotetsu, still doing guard duty? I thought you were past that sort of thing already, Naruto said getting the two gate guards to flinch. Oh Naruto, it's you. Along with some pretty guests, Kotetsu said grinning at Gurren who shivered slightly. Fuka pouted and muttering something about people seeing real beauty, but she didn't do anything about it. Thank you. Gurren said in uncertainty while Kotetsu just chuckled and smiled while he rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. Naruto shook his head while Kakashi, Yugao, Sasuke and Makoto handed in their identification along with Kushina. Once that was done they turned their heads and they noticed Tsunade walking up to them. Welcome back brat. Haven't seen you since that little incident that you had back at your house, Tsunade said and Naruto just rubbed the back of his head and nodded while he introduced everyone else which Tsunade greeted. And lastly this is Gurren-chan along with Yukimaru, Naruto said and the two bowed while Tsunade just smiled with a nod of her head. Kushina, I had heard that you planned on having these two join your clan. Is that right? Tsunade asked and Kushina nodded. That's exactly right Databane, Kushina said as she hugged Yuri and Yura who just blushed and sighed. Tsunade shook her head and with a small hug with Naruto, she spun on her heel along with Shizune and the two began to walk away before Tsunade turned around. Also Naruto, Jiraiya wants to speak with you and the rest of Hinoken. Something about the Akatsuki report that you sent me. Kakashi, you might have to. Wait, Kakashi is that? Tsunade trailed off as she noticed Rin waving at her. Kakashi just rubbed the back of his head and nodded while Tsunade turned to Naruto who also indicated that it was him who had done it and Tsunade acknowledged it and continued. Why are you so much older? Shouldn't you be like this kid's age? Tsunade asked pointing to Yukimaru and Rin just blushed while she pointed back to Naruto who grinned widely while giving her a thumbs up. Tsunade rolled her eyes and shook her head. She acknowledged what Naruto had secretly said to her and continued on. Fine then. Naruto, Jiraiya is going to want to know about her as well as this Akatsuki member that you fought. Oh, and just a heads up, Jiraiya is sort of pissed about you letting go of the toads. Just thought I'd let you know, Tsunade said while Naruto sighed. He nodded and watched her leave. So what are you going to do? Naruto asked turning to everyone else. Fuka shrugged her shoulders and placed a hand on her hip. Well for one, I'm going to show Yuri, Yura, Gurren-chan and the others to the house and maybe we'll get some dinner after that, Fuka said while Naruto nodded. He grabbed his mother's hand and led her away while Yura and Yuri left with Fuka and Gurren. Yukimaru stayed with Gurren since, well he would have gotten lost in Konoha with his mouth to the ground in awe. Zabuza, Haku, Suigetsu, Karen and Jugo stayed in Uzushiogakure to protect it since Naruto never told that the former two were alive and Sasuke never told that the other three were a part of Orochimaru's former group that he was using to form his search group for Itachi. He would find his brother. Sooner or later, but right now, other things took priority. All my life nothing would have taken priority over Itachi, Sasuke thought to himself before he just shook his head and continued to follow his mother and his lover back to his house. They had a meeting later at night time, so at least they had some time to themselves. With Naruto and Kushina. Naruto dragged Kushina off to a small corner and smiled while he gave her a quick kiss on the lips, which Kushina really liked as she rested her hands on his shoulder for a bit, just enjoying the little time that they had together before Naruto parted and smiled. "So, before the pleasantness sets in, what did you need to talk with me about?" Kushina asked, and Naruto looked left and right before he shook his head. "Yeah, to do this here wouldn't be a good idea. Ka-chan, we're going to the house and I'm going to transport us to the bedroom. I really need to check something that Shin talked with me about," Naruto said, and Kushina narrowed her eyes, but nodded while Naruto snapped his fingers, opened a portal, and the two Uzumaki disappeared to their house. It wasn't that far, and so, Naruto and Kushina stepped out while Naruto closed the door to their room. Kushina seemed confused by everything before she heard Naruto speak. "Ka-chan, could you take your top off?" Naruto asked, and Kushina just glared at her son and placed a hand on her hip. "Don't we usually set the mood with a little dinner or something like that before you try to screw your mother senseless?" Kushina asked, and even Kyuubi laughed at that while Naruto stuttered. He blushed across his face and waved his hands in front of her face. "And no, that's not what I meant. I mean, I love having you as my partner, Ka-chan, but I just meant that." Naruto trailed off while Kushina lightly giggled. It was too easy sometimes, but that's what she loved about her son. "I know that, Sochi. I'm just teasing you. So take off my top, right? The only others I did this for were Minato and Tsunade," Kushina said as she sat on the bed and quickly unfastened her Hinoken shirt. She gently placed it on the bed while her hair dropped down and she slowly began to work her mesh armor. Naruto gulped at the slow way his mother was enticing him, and if it wasn't for the situation plaguing his mind, then he would just jump at her right there. His mother always had that mature look to her. She never needed any makeup to look as beautiful as she did, and if she ever did put any on, then it only enhanced his mother's beauty. Her skin was just as soft as a teen's, if not softer. Those round breasts, those luscious lips, those long amazing thighs. Sochi. Those long legs, that amazing figure, that sexy voice, that squeezable ass, those soft, amazing, silk-like hands. Sochi. The perfect eyes and that amazing. Sochi. Kushina shouted, and Naruto snapped out of his thoughts as he noticed that Kushina was finished and she was looking at him more than a little confused by his absent thoughts. Naruto smiled and rubbed his head while apologizing before he sat down and looked over his mother's neck. He noticed something and glared while he moved her red hair out of the way. "Is this it? Is this what Shin told me about?" Naruto thought to himself, and due to his silence Kushina was more than a little nervous. She had hoped nothing was wrong with her, as she never had any complaints about her reserves of Honsho that she had been using. Hopefully it wouldn't be anything too bad, she hoped. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he saw a bright silver jewel-shaped crest at the nape of her neck. He glared at it, and he also noticed something else. Naruto flipped up a good portion of his mother's red hair and he noticed about 5 strands of red hair were slightly silver. No way was this a sign of old age, as his mother had Uzumaki youth and longevity to show that she'd be around for a long time, and not to mention that, technically, she was one of his summons was another quirk. But these strands of hair, what was it about them then? "Sochi, you've been quiet for a long time. Is something wrong?" Kushina asked, and Naruto stopped his thinking while he placed her hair down, covering the few silver hairs that she had. He sighed and turned around. "Ka-chan, can you lift up a bit of my hair and tell me what you see?" Naruto asked as he took off his shirt and mesh armor, giving Kushina a lovely view of her son's muscular back. That same back that she had more or less used her hands to roam around when they made love or just really wanted to feel each other. It had also just occurred to Kushina, she was the one who had taken her son's virginity. Oh, the irony of that first time. Alright then, Kushina said, and she brushed her son's hair slightly before she lifted it up. She looked over it, but saw nothing out of the ordinary, until her eyes rested on a jewel at the nape of his neck. She raised an eyebrow and she noticed that a few of the smaller strands of his hair were silverish. "Well, Sochi, I don't know what it means, but I see a jewel on your neck. It's similar to the one that Tsunade has on her forehead, but yours seems to stretch into a swirl." "Sochi, what aren't you telling me?" Kushina asked, and Naruto sighed while he pulled his head away. He shook his head left and right and bit the nail of his thumb. "Ka-chan, it's supposed to be some kind of test. I'm not sure because Shin didn't offer any specifics, but he told me on thing. We're going to be in pain Ka-chan, lots of it. He said that as his summoners we will experience Hokage Mansion, later. Tsunade narrowed her eyes and sighed heavily while Jiraiya and the rest of Hinoken were in the room as well while Kushina just finished explaining everything to Tsunade. Jiraiya seemed absolutely floored. Stop playing tricks Kushina. That's impossible. There is no way that it could be Obito. Jiraiya shouted while Naruto turned to him. I know it was him. Ka-chan is right because I was the one who fought him. Not you. I don't know the means, but he's around Ero Sennin. He was so surprised by Makoto-chan's arrival and also the fact that Sasuke was back with us. If there is a masked man that attacked Konoha then it would be him. It makes the most sense, Naruto said while Kakashi and Rin just nodded in acceptance. I see. Well, this is troubling. Obito was already classified as Kia and if he's around then he's a missing nin. However, no one knows Obito that well so they won't be able to recognize him. Did he say anything to you? Tsunade asked while Naruto just shook his head. Just that I would submit to him and that I wasn't as fast as my father, Naruto said and the others widened their eyes. They all glanced to each other while Tsunade and Jiraiya were just itching to know. And how did you manage to beat him if you even your father couldn't? Jiraiya asked while Tsunade listened closely. Everyone wanted to know also. Well, for one, my father did beat him, I will tell you that. He lost to Kyuubi. How I managed to beat him, with my newest jutsu that I created with Ka-chan, Naruto said and Jiraiya gasped. He quickly took out his notepad while Naruto glared. Don't bother. You can't learn it and I refuse to teach it to you. It is only a technique for those of the Uzumaki clan, no other, except that either I or Ka-chan deem fit. Sorry Ero Sennin, Naruto said and Jiraiya snorted. What is it? Tsunade asked and Naruto grinned. He just sighed and shook his head. You wouldn't know it and even then you wouldn't believe me. It's jutsu that goes beyond the limits of chakra. My and Ka-chan's jutsu can stop time, Naruto said while Tsunade and Jiraiya glanced at each other. None of the members of Hinoken were confused as they all experienced the technique that Naruto was talking about. Ha 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 ha, oh that's a good one brat. Oh man, you sounded so serious right there. If a jutsu could stop time then it would be right up there with Minato's Hiraishin. Oh that's funny, Jiraiya cackled while everyone narrowed their eyes. Rin especially at Summon insulting her master. While Naruto had knocked her out of it, Rin still considered Naruto to be Shikon-sama, the summoner to the Shinigami, and she didn't take lightly to disrespect. She was about to move before Naruto stopped her. She did and Naruto snapped his fingers sending out a ripple of white honsho. Time stopped and Naruto looked at Jiraiya's laughing face. He snorted and pulled his fist back. Laugh at this, Naruto shouted as he slammed his fist at Jiraiya's face. Naruto sighed with a smile before he glared at his mother. He grinned and stole a kiss from the motionless woman and resumed the time. Oh www son of a bitch. What the hell hit me? Jiraiya asked rubbing his face which happened to be bleeding. Rin grinned while Sasuke and Kakashi gave amused chuckles. Makoto and Yugao shook their heads and Kushina blushed. She touched her lips and glared at Naruto who was whistling absently. Right, well anyway, Hinoken, I have a mission for all of you. Next week I will be going to Kumo. Something about exchanging information along with the territorial boundaries and the such. So all 6 of you will be coming with me. Also, Sasuke, any luck in finding Itachi? Tsunade asked and Makoto eyed her son while Sasuke just growled and folded his arms. No, there wasn't. I had a few hints to go on, but not much. However, I will find him one of these days. He can't hide forever, Sasuke said and Tsunade just nodded. Don't worry Sasuke, with the Sannin traveling rights that I gave you and Hinoken then you will have all the time in the world to find him and do what you would like, Tsunade said and Sasuke just nodded before grumbling and stepping back. So is it only going to be the 6 of us going? Naruto asked and Tsunade just rose an eyebrow. Why? Did you have someone in mind that you would like to go? Because I don't need to make this a very large habit, Tsunade said and Naruto agreed with her. I understand. I want to bring Yuri and Yura with me. If only to keep an eye on both and I'm teaching them about the nations. They haven't really traveled around a lot through the world and Yuri would really like to. Is that okay? Naruto asked and Tsunade nodded. So long as they take care of themselves, she said and Naruto nodded that they could. Which they really could. I would also like to take Yuna with us. I think she needs to see how much the world has changed since she's been around. Would that be alright? Sasuke asked and Makoto gave a knowing smile, but played it off while Tsunade nodded. Very well. I shall honor both of your requests. Just make sure that they don't cause trouble or it will be your heads and your careers. Now then, dismissed, Tsunade said while Jiraiya cracked his jaw back into place. Damn, that really hurt. But if it really is Obito, then Tsunade, I can only imagine how powerful he is. Especially since he was able to evenly match Minato as he was. It's something to think about, Jiraiya said and Tsunade nodded. Wait, you don't think that the Yondaime Mizukage who was under the control of a Sharingan was controlled by, Tsunade said and Jiraiya sighed while he opened the window. Right now, I'll believe anything. It'll take some time to organize the research, but I'll get it done. Well, see you later, Haim, Jiraiya said while Tsunade just leaned her elbows on the table and took out a bottle of sake. Time have the complete use of this thing. Time to get drunk and forget this damn conversation, Tsunade said to herself. With Danzo. Danzo snorted as he threw on his cloak. He had sent out one of his best agents, Kamachi, to deliver a message to one of his contacts in Kumo. She had been gone for 3 days. Either something happened to her or she had figured out that she had been a pawn. Either way, he couldn't have that and it would be a threat to his operations if it were. After the failure of using one of Naruto's relatives against him to get the Kyuubi, then Danzo detached himself from the Akatsuki. He would have to head to Kumo himself and see just what shit would be happening. Torun, Fu, prepare for our departure, Danzo said and his 2 operatives nodded as they bowed. Both quickly began to escort Danzo out while they walked off. Kamachi, just what the hell are you doing? Danzo thought to himself before he walked off. Chapter 31. Quote, the great blessings of mankind are within us, and within our reach, but we shut our eyes, and, like people in the dark, we fall foul upon the very thing we search for, without finding it, by Seneca. Back of the Uzumaki house. Naruto smiled as he watched Yuri sitting in her meditative pose. He had currently been instructing her with the Sanbi's chakra, and having Yuri already take to chakra at her young age, then she didn't have the horrible control that he had at a few times in his life. That's good, Yuri, just like that. Also remember, that the Sanbi is a being. You can't just take its chakra. You must come to terms with each other, Naruto told her, and Yuri stayed silent while she allowed her chakra to rise. Naturally, being an Uzumaki, Yuri had exceptional reserves, and now then Sanbi would be adding to that as she got older. Naruto ni, Sanbi says that it is really pissed that you sealed it in me. It also says that it looked through my memories. It wanted me to say this to Kyuubi. Your container is so funny. Ha ha ha. To throw morality right out of the window and do what he did, Yuri said, and Naruto twitched while Kyuubi gave a feral grin and nodded. He raised a claw and scratched his head while he spoke. Oh, you don't know the half of it, you damn turtle. It's just getting interesting. Isn't that right, Kit? Kyuubi asked while Naruto grumbled under his breath about the Sanbi before he patted his legs. Standing to his feet, the blonde helped Yuri up also while she dusted off her clothes. We'll stop there for today, Yuri-chan. No need to exert yourself. Also, since Sanbi can apparently hear you, then tell it this. Fuck you, Naruto said with a grin while Yuri just blinked. She just shrugged her shoulder and inwardly smiled. You get all that, Sanbi-chan? Yuri asked, and the large mass of chakra just smirked as its 3 tails just lazily thrashed around and it snorted. Damn cheeky brat. I can see why he's Kyuubi's container. Well, whatever, nothing I can do about this shit now. Tell him I said whatever and I'm cutting this connection, girl. No offense, but I'd rather not talk if I don't have to, Sanbi said before going silent. Yuri snickered to herself and relayed the message to Naruto while the blonde just shook his head and guided Yuri back to the house, which wasn't very far away. Yuri sighed and came through the door while she saw Gurren, Fuka, Yura and Kushina around the room just laying there. Yukimaru was currently reading something about genjutsu that Gurren had instructed him to begin learning. It had to be this way since Yukimaru wasn't really a shinobi, but Gurren didn't want all of Yukimaru's time with Orochimaru to go to waste, so she had taken it upon herself to teach him. Not that anyone objected to that. No one feel like doing anything? Naruto asked, and everyone just groaned. It was too hot to be training and it was too early that the shops weren't really open just yet. Nothing could be done. Not unless you have a make life better because it's too fucking hot, no jutsu, Fuka said, and Naruto could see her fanning herself with a small festival fan. Naruto snickered at her comment while Yura got up and went over to Yuri. She softly patted her sister's stomach and gently smiled. Is everything okay with you, Yuri? Nothing is happening, is it? Yura asked, and Yuri shook her head. She had been feeling all but great recently. Normally when she was training she would be sort of tired after about 2 hours, but now she could go for 4, or 6, maybe 7 hours by this time. It felt overwhelming. No, Yura ni-chan, it's all good. I have Naruto ni for that, Yuri said, wrapping her arms around her Uzumaki brother while Naruto just rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. He then turned and he saw Kushina staring at him intently with a blank face and gave her a thumbs up. Kushina just sighed with a short nod and leaned back before everyone heard a knock on the door. Grumbling to herself, Fuka got up and walked over to said door and opened it, showing everyone, Kakashi, Sakura, Sasuke, and Yuna in the doorway. Everyone's sweat dropped, however, as they saw Sakura glaring daggers at Yuna for some reason. Naruto turned to Sasuke to see the Uchiha turn back to him. It surprised Naruto that Sasuke was able to keep his cold look while he mouthed, "Help me." To the blonde. Naruto shook his head before Sakura broke her glare at Yuna and turned to Naruto. Hey Naruto, I tracked down Kakashi-sensei, and Sasuke-kun. We're going for a bite, wanna come? Sakura asked, and Naruto just stared at her blankly before a very heavy sigh came from his lips. He could say no. He could be the ass right now and waste Sakura's efforts of even trying to convince him to go, but he wasn't like that, well, much. Yeah, his training with Shin had done quite a bit on his personality as well his outlook, but if what he was seeing was right, then Sasuke was right in the crossfire of Yuna and Sakura. And who was he to not make fun of a comrade in need? And then help them. Alright, fine. It's too hot to be staying in this house anyway. You guys have any plans? Naruto asked to the rest of his family, and it was at this that Kushina's eyes gleamed and she quickly hopped to her feet. She wrapped her arms around Yura and Yuri. Oh, just gonna do some shopping or so. See you later, Sochi, Kushina said sweetly, a little too sweetly if Naruto had a hint. He turned around and nodded while he quickly wiped off the sweat from his face, put on a change of clothes and walked out of the door, leaving the others in the room. Do we really have to go shopping? Yura asked, and Kushina nodded with her winning smile and dragged the two young Uzumaki out of the house and into the blazing sun. You know, we should do something too instead of lazing around the house, Gurren said, and Fuka arched her head over the arm of the couch. Oh, and what would you suggest? The red-haired flirtatious Uzumaki, and Gurren smirked while she glanced toward Yukimaru. The young boy felt a sudden chill go down his spine and he looked over his book. What is it, Gurren-san? Yukimaru asked, and Gurren smiled while she stood to her feet. Fuka did the same and the two nodded to each other before they each grabbed Yukimaru's arms and hoisted him into the air. Yukimaru, it is time that you learned, Gurren said as they opened the back door and walked into the woods with a struggling Yukimaru in the distance. With Team 7. Having left the Namikaze house behind in the distance of the forest, Kakashi and Naruto snickered while Sakura growled at the new woman standing, in her opinion, too closely to Sasuke. Who was she? And why had Sakura never seen her before? The bitch, thinking she could muscle in on what was hers by right. She had loved Sasuke more. This bitch, who did she think she was? Okay, now long is your little fangirl going to stare at me? Yuna whispered while Sasuke shuddered. He then growled and shook his head left and right. She's not mine. Just ignore her. We're only doing this since Kakashi said that it would be nice to be together for once, Sasuke said while Yuna just sighed and folded her arms. She just shook her head and grumbled. Well, I don't need to be here then. I'm going to the hot springs since they're open at this time. See you later, Sasuke, Yuna said before she kissed Sasuke's cheek. Sakura dropped her jaw to the ground and she noticed Yuna send a glare her way while Kakashi and Naruto glanced to each other. They grinned and watched Yuna shunshin from the streets, just leaving them there. So, where are we going to eat? Naruto asked while Sasuke shrugged his shoulders. Kakashi did the same before Sakura's hair shadowed her eyes and she firmly grabbed Sasuke's shoulder. Who is that, Sasuke-kun? Sakura asked while Sasuke just glared impassively at her. He didn't know what this sudden mood change was. Okay, fine, so he did know. He wasn't ignorant by a long shot. He knew what Sakura had meant when she had asked that. Obviously she was upset, but Sasuke really didn't feel like telling her. He was the one to choose who he gave his time to, and that person just wasn't Sakura. She's my girlfriend. Does that answer your question? Sasuke asked, and Sakura's eyebrow twitched while she scoffed. She was better looking than that bitch, right? She had a lot going for her, right? Sakura just let her arms fall to the ground while an uncomfortable silence came over the area. Kakashi and Naruto inched away from them both while Naruto took this opportunity to turn to Kakashi. It's weird that you would agree to that, Kakashi-sensei. I thought you'd like to stay with Rin-chan, wherever she is, Naruto said, and Kakashi gave an eye smile while Naruto wrapped his hand around his neck. I mean, I thought you two would be acting out a scene from Ero Sennin's books or something like that, Naruto finished, and Kakashi looked at his book, then back at Naruto. Well, Naruto, it's rather hard to just do that with Rin since she might have aged, but she hasn't done so mentally. I still think I'd be a pedophile. Don't you? Kakashi asked while Naruto shrugged his shoulders. How in the hell should I know? I did my part. I did what you wanted, and now it's your turn to take that step. I'm not leading you anymore, Naruto said while Kakashi sighed with a nod. They both then turned to see Sasuke and Sakura walking up to them as the rest of Team 7 went on their way. So Naruto, where are your summons? I don't sense them around you, Kakashi said while Sakura raised an eyebrow. She had heard about Naruto having a legendary contract, but with the blonde never truly being in Konoha for like the past month or so, then she hadn't seen him much to ask. It was when him and the rest of Hinoken had come for the funeral that people started to ask about Naruto's contract. It had also been when Kurenai had begged Naruto to do something about Asuma. He wondered why she had done so. It's not like Naruto had control over the dead. Yeah, right. Oh, they are taking the day off also. Ya no, I let them roam. Yeah, Ba-chan's probably going to get a headache, Naruto said, and everyone wondered what he meant by that, especially Kakashi. Sasuke just glared at Naruto while Sakura balled her fists. Naruto, you had better not be causing trouble for Shisho. I'll pound you to the ground if you do, Sakura said, and Sasuke shook his head while Naruto turned his head. It was then that Sakura flinched as she took a step back unconsciously from Naruto's dark, cold eyes. Oh, he wanted her to try it. He really did. He wasn't about to take a hit from her again, not in his life. Never if he could help it. Don't try to threaten me, Sakura. You could never hope to catch me, Naruto said, and Sakura grinned as she tightened her gloves and threw a punch at Naruto's head. Sasuke and Kakashi shook their heads while it happened so fast. Naruto swirled his feet around the ground while he seemed to vanish in the air. Sakura widened her eyes before she felt the weight of her body shift and she was sent into the air. Kakashi and Sasuke sighed, but they were impressed that Sakura thought fast and landed on the ground with a look of surprise. Naruto had to hide his own surprise as he wasn't completely expecting Sakura to come from that, but he figured that she had to learn something. Those 2 years ago, Sakura had told Naruto that she changed. And she really did. Whoa, how did you do that, Naruto? I didn't even see you move. That was amazing, Sakura complimented while Naruto smiled. I didn't lay on my ass for those 2 years, Sakura. You should know that, Naruto said, and Sakura nodded before she quickly picked herself up and dusted off her clothes. I'm glad about that. Well, let's hurry up. We're late, Sakura said, and she ran off while Naruto, Sasuke and Kakashi followed her towards their destination. With Tayuya, Kimimaro, Dan, Pakura and Fujika's. Ah, well, what the fuck are we supposed to do? I'm so damn bored that this shit is bound to make me go insane. Tayuya shouted while Dan and Pakura were lying in the field of trees. Fujika's and Kimimaro could hear her prattle, but didn't do anything to stop it. No, they just tried to enjoy the sun as much as they could. Yes, they could feel the sun. They had their bodies, but they were more or less not able to do a few things with them. They couldn't eat, drink, nor could they directly interact with anyone like speak to them without their summoner's approval. Tayuya-san, just relax. Allow the presence of nature to calm your troubled soul. Shikan-sama has given us this day off and I wouldn't like to waste it. Are you happy? Fujika's asked while Tayuya snorted. She leaned against a tree, but she did have to admit that the wind really felt good on her skin. It's not like she could do much of anything else except play her flute. Still, she really wished that she wasn't dead. I do have to agree with Tayuya-san. I do think that maybe we could do something fun as well, Dan said with a smile while Tayuya grinned. It was then that her mind went into overdrive and she placed a finger to her chin. Everyone got a shiver down their spine. Something in her Uzumaki blood was spiking, and there was one thing that they knew about the Uzumaki. They were hot-headed and they were natural-born pranksters. To Yuya-san, what are you about to? Dan stopped and Yuya whispered into his ear. The former Konoha Jonin widened his eyes while Yuya started to tell the others her plan as well. Pakura snorted while Kimimaro remained impassive. Fujika's sighed and Yuya got to her feet. Well, let's get going. I also know who can help us out, Yuya said as she floated off. Dan eagerly followed her with a snicker while Fujika's, Pakura and Kimimaro stayed together. The second female of the 5 summons just sighed and leaned up. She shrugged her shoulders and floated off, leaving Kimimaro and Fujika's. Well, someone has to watch her for Shikan Dono. Fujika's tried to convince himself and floated off with Kimimaro right behind him. It was probably going to be a bad day for Konoha in general. Somewhere in AIM, Toby coughed and took off his mask as he sat on a bed. He placed his right hand over his mouth, and when he calmed down he noticed blood on said hand while he felt the left side of his body burning. The same place where Naruto had slammed him with a Rasengan, but even Minato didn't have such lasting damage against him when they had faced. What made Naruto so strong? He could feel an invading energy in his body. It was making him sick. It was killing him. No, he couldn't die. There was too much stuff for him to do. If he died, then his ambition would go up in smoke. He could have that. Obito leaned and placed his left hand on the table next to him, trying to steady his feet before he cursed. Arg! He shouted and fell to the ground. He coughed again before using his right hand and getting to his feet. What was this presence that was invading his body? It also felt like his body was crumbling at the seams. Toby looked up and he noticed Konan and Nagato in the room. He quickly steeled his face and resisted the pain while he placed on his mask. He steadied himself and turned back to his 2 partners. What is it? He asked while Konan glanced towards her only friend. Nagato just folded his arms. Why are you so injured? It has been a week and a half since your proclaimed assault on the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. You look like you are about to crumble from sickness, Nagato said. Nothing could get past the eyes of a god. Not even the ever so obvious things. Maybe the Kyuubi Jinchuriki is too much for you, Pain asked before he had a glare casted at him. I will be fine. Just do your job. It's as simple as that. Understood. Toby asked before he walked out of the room. Whatever Naruto did to him, it was affecting his chakra, and badly. He had some research to go do. Konohagakure, council room. Tsunade was never known to be a tolerant woman. While she had tolerated a lot, she still wasn't about to be walked over by people, and that included the council. It was quite obvious that word had been spreading about Naruto, and while no one would make a big deal about a contract and tons of people had them, Tsunade was just being so secretive about it. She kept saying that it was Naruto's contract, and as a shinobi he wasn't obliged to explain anything to anyone. Especially since no one had cared to know that she had the slugs at one point. Tsunade, be that as it may. With the current presence of Akatsuki around, we must know the full extent to Uzumaki's potential. He is after all the son of the Yondaime. You should just tell him to tell us. If it's not a big deal, then he will not be so protective of it. Unless you're hiding something from us, Tsunade, Koharu said while Tsunade kept her face buried in her hands. The Shinobi Council on the left and the Civilian Council on the right. So many people wanted to know that it was kind of nerve-wracking. Tsunade glanced towards Hiyashi, and the Hyuga head kept his face impassive, which told her all she needed on the subject. Tell me, Koharu, why are you so interested in Naruto now? As I recall, you and the rest of this council didn't give a damn about him in his early life. So now that he's actually contributing to this village, then you take a personal interest. In case you have forgotten, but you are already overstepping your boundaries, Tsunade said while Koharu steeled her gaze, but she didn't have anything that she could say against such a claim, since she knew that Tsunade was very much right. No one had been around Naruto to really demand anything from him, but all these things occurring, and then there was Naruto's hesitant look during the funeral. How in the hell were the people supposed to calm down from this? Tsunade, you forget your place. You are responsible for this village and all of its inhabitants. You cannot exclude information from us that might prove vital. It is your duty to put the people first and know just someone that you hold close. You are better than that, Koharu said before everyone blinked. Koharu in her sudden outrage had failed to notice that Tsunade was staring at her as well. What are you all looking at? I'm talking here. Kaharu shouted while Sum raised her hand to her head and pointed. Everyone else mimicked her while the Anbu tilted their heads to the side. Above Kaharu's head were 3 fireballs dancing around each other. Soon the fireballs disappeared as music started to play. The lights went out and the civilian council jumped up fast. Everyone was in a panic while the Anbu dropped to the ground. Tsunade narrowed her eyes and the shinobi council quickly took action as music started to play. What the hell is this? Tsunade shouted before everyone heard 3 voices. You have all been tried and found guilty. You will pay with your souls. You will give yourselves to USSSSSS, they hissed and the civilian council gulped while the more experienced people narrowed their eyes. 5 glowing white fireballs appeared in front of everyone. They danced around and they quickly came into view. You will pay with your souls. We will have our revenge. They shouted as the wind picked up around everyone as they covered their eyes. The room was instantly flashed with a key as a blinding light appeared above them. Everyone looked up and even Hiyashi, with his Byakugan active, couldn't dispel what was happening as they noticed a large fireball over their heads. It was then that the fireball lit up the room and everyone noticed Dan walking up to them. Now yes, spirits couldn't directly communicate with people, but it was a little thing called premonition. He simply manifested his body in front of them. Koharu, you traitor rrrrrr. You'd hide it from everyone, wouldn't you? Dan asked as he stepped forward. His ki launched through the room while the Anbu took a step back. Tsunade eyed Dan and she saw a lot of amusement in his eyes and sighed. Damn him. However, Tsunade just couldn't hide her amusement also and wanted to play along. Sure, she'd have paperwork, but this might be fun. Kaharu, what is the meaning of this? What did you do? Tsunade shouted while people turned to her. Kaharu took a step back and shook her head. And no, I didn't do anything. I swear it. I never did anything to Dan, she pleaded while Dan took out a kunai from his pouch. He chuckled and then he cackled while the lights flickered and the flute music intensified. A large array of bones sprung from the ground and Dan smiled. Don't you remember me, Kaharu-chan? Do you not remember the night we shared? You said, you loved me. Was that a lie? Dan asked as he took his white kunai and walked towards her. Kaharu gulped and felt her elderly bones buckle as she continued until she couldn't back away anymore. Kaharu-san, what have you done? A council member asked. Why, you had a thing with Dan Kato. I've misjudged you. How old were you to do that? Some people asked while Kaharu shook her head. Lies, they are all lies. She said and Dan stopped while he dropped his kunai to the ground. He placed a hand over his head and turned to Tsunade. He walked up to her and fell to the ground. Oh Tsunade-chan, I'm so sorry for what I've done. I have been so unfaithful. I know you can't forgive me, so please. Let me correct my mistake. Let me be happy. Let me drag my lover to hell, Dan said as he lunged at Kaharu. She shivered as he wrapped his arms around her body. He smiled at her as best he could before he looked at the ground and grinned as seals appeared while Fujikas and Tayuya flew into the room. They swirled around as spirits normally do while everyone looked on. Hokage-sama, what shall we do? An Anbu asked while Tsunade saw Dan carrying Kaharu through the portal. She shook her head while Homura gulped. Everyone was stiff before Sum snarled. Damn, we can't just stand here. She shouted as she and Kuromaru lunged at Dan. She wanted to slash him apart before she noticed a skeletal creature come from the ground and block her. You shall not pass, it said and Sum widened her eyes. Tsunade turned to Hiyashi and he looked at her with an, "Are you serious?" look and Tsunade just smiled, telling Hiyashi all he needed to know. Shikaku, do something. Come up with a plan. Inoichi shouted before another wave of fireballs came over them. Shikaku balled his fists as he didn't have a plan for something like this. Things were happening too fast. Also, these couldn't exist. There were no such thing as spirits. Right. Everyone dodged the attack and glanced towards Dan holding Kaharu in his arms. Now then, Kaharu-chan, let us descend into hell, where we shall be one forever and ever. And ever, Dan said while the light enveloped both his and her body. No, I don't want to go. Tsunade, help me. Gather the Anbu, call someone. I'm not ready to go. Kaharu shouted while Tsunade sniffled and turned her head. It's all your fault. I never had his heart. I knew something fishy was going on. Damn you, Kaharu. Damn you. I hope you can be happy where you are going. Tsunade replied harshly while Kaharu screamed. Dan smiled and waved goodbye. Now then, come my love. With me, to, hell, Dan said, and a light enveloped the room with only a scream staying in there. Everyone shielded their eyes from the light before it faded. Tsunade opened her eyes and everyone saw Koharu's body on the ground. She was staring wide-eyed at the ceiling while she shivered. No, she wasn't going to have a heart attack, but boy was she pale. Everyone raced over to her and Tsunade placed her hands on her chest. Why you all have to believe me? I didn't do anything of the sort, Koharu said while people glanced at each other. They all started to murmur to themselves before they shook their heads and walked away. No, I really didn't, she said, and people just didn't pay her a glance. Koharu, I will deal with you later. For right now, just get out of my sight. I'm ending this meeting, Tsunade said, and people just filed out. They paid one last glance to Koharu before filing out, leaving Tsunade alone. Tsunade sighed and sat in a chair before she snickered. She didn't even have to turn around to see Dan, Pakura, Tayuya, Kimimaro and Fujika's behind her. Dan smirked as he placed his arms on the table. So was that as much fun for you as it was for us? He asked while Tsunade calmed her laughter. Oh yes, that was very creative. I had actually thought that you had done that at first, but I'm glad it was a joke, Tsunade replied. It was my idea, thank you very much, Tayuya said. She never liked that bitch anyway. Especially not the first time that she had seen her, which was, this time. Yep, that woman was the target from the start. Oh man, that was fun for her. Well, I will have to condone it this time simply because you have all helped me out quite a bit. I needed that little distraction as you guys are becoming quite popular along with Naruto, Tsunade said, and everyone got serious at the hearing of their summoner. What of it? Pakura asked, and Tsunade cleared her throat before she replied, well, frankly, it's not really a secret about you guys. People know he has a contract, just not what it holds. They have all been pestering the hell out of me about it and I was nearing the end of my rope on that one, Tsunade said with a sigh while everyone else glanced at each other. Well then, why doesn't the Shikan-sama do something about it? He's obviously not going to crack from this place. He told us what it was like. If you people couldn't break him then what makes you think he'll tell now? Tayuya asked, and Tsunade snickered. I really have no idea, but I know that if it comes down to it, humans are really demons in disguise. Please protect Naruto, if I fail to do so, Tsunade said, and the others smiled. Hi Tsunade-san, they all said before they vanished out of sight. Tsunade then just smiled, stood to her feet and walked off. She would have to get ready by next week. With Kushina, Yuri and Yura. The three female were currently trying on clothes with each other as they had bag after bag in front of them. Kushina had decided this just to find out more about her family. A little family bonding, if you will. Simply wanting to know more about each other, and without Naruto around. He was always around, but sometimes it was just best to get along with each other. Yura Ni-chan, do you think Ni-san would like this? Yuri asked while Yura blushed at the sight of a red sleeveless shirt with a button design in the middle allowing for maximum to minimum cover of cleavage. Feeling embarrassed about the issue, Yura snorted. Why Yuri, that is indecent. How can you think about such things? Yura asked while Yuri smiled. Yep, that reaction had told her that this was another good choice. Also no, Kushina's eyebrow twitched before she chuckled darkly. Yuri-chan, please come over here for a second, Kushina said, more as an order than anything else. Yuri and Yura flinched from her voice and walked over to her while Kushina grabbed them. She smiled brightly before it darkened. You think I don't know what you're doing? You think you can steal Sochi away from me? Kushina asked while Yuri and Yura widened their eyes. They turned to her and gasped. His own mother. Not only them, but his own mother had this type of thing going on also. Why you too? Yuri asked, and Kushina smiled. Is there a problem? She asked, hoping that there wasn't one. Problems were meant to be resolved. Yura and Yuri shook their heads and inched away from the elder Uzumaki while Yura bit her thumb. Che, Ni-sama, I think I have a better body than Kushina-san. Oh, or do you prefer mature women? Yura wondered to herself as she looked at her breasts, then at Kushina's, and sighed dejectedly. Wow, now we have nothing to hide, right? We all like Ni-san. I vote for sharing, Yuri said, raising her hand while Kushina and Yura stared at her. They then turned to each other and shook their heads left and right. Why should we share? We're Uzumaki. We don't share. Kushina and Yura shouted at the same time while Yuri's sweat dropped. Oh, I don't know. I just think that's better than the alternative. Which is two of us being heartbroken, Yuri said while Yura glared at Kushina. Kushina glared at the two younger Uzumaki and it was a good staring match for a bit. Well, Nisama could also just leave us all and just go off with either Fukune or Gurine. You know how they are, Yuri added, and a small fire appeared behind Kushina and Yura. Never, no way in the seven bowels of hell. It wouldn't happen. I call first dibs, Databane, Kushina shouted while Yura and Yuri stood slack-jawed. Hey, that's not fair, Datbayan. I brought us all together, so I should have first dibs. Yuri argued, and Yura felt a little left out before a tick mark appeared on her head and she cracked her knuckles. No, I call first dibs. Besides, Nisama's first kiss was mine, Yura said proudly while Yuri growled. Kushina's eyes then beamed as she placed a hand on her hips. Oh no, his first kiss was mine, Yura-chan. Actually his first was with me also. So you have no firsts, Kushina said, and Yura widened her eyes. Actually, Naruto never told his mother about where his first kiss actually went, as he all but suppressed that memory forever. It was never to be seen or brought up again. Yura fumbled and pointed her long finger at Kushina, who could say that she was finally proud of something that had to do with her son. Well, she was proud of a lot of things, but that was beside the point. See, cheater, we didn't even know Nisama that time. You can't hold us to that. Yura shouted while Kushina shook her head. Nope, that's how it goes. He's officially mine. I'm just lending him to you when I'm not around, Kushina said as she swayed her way out of the store. Yura and Yuri glanced to each other and growled. They really weren't going to like this arrangement, but it was all that they could come up with. With Team 7, Sasuke and Naruto sat together along with Kakashi and Sakura as they waited for their food to arrive. It was obvious to everyone that Sakura was really happy with being able to be a team again, well, at least for a little while anyway. So what's it like out there? I've only been on minor missions, but you guys had to have been everywhere, right? Sakura asked with her elbows on the table. Chan, it's nothing major. Just the usual, Sasuke said, more to himself than an answer to Sakura, but everyone heard it. Basically like Sasuke says it. Nothing too big. Did some missions, earned some money, fought Akatsuki, that stuff, Naruto said, and Sakura widened her eyes while she turned to Sasuke and Kakashi, who nodded in seriousness. Was it Itachi? Sakura asked, and she only saw Sasuke's hands ball in either anger or contempt. Either way, it showed that he wasn't happy, but he was so closer. Hopefully in this mission to Kumo, he could find some things out. No, it wasn't Itachi. It was. Kakashi paused as he thought it over. He turned to see Sasuke and Naruto glaring at him, but both could see that even he didn't want to believe what was coming out of his mouth. Nearly all of Team Minato had met. Kakashi had met Obito, but he didn't know that Rin was alive. Somehow, some way he would have to get Obito to see Rin, if at all. Well, we don't know who it was. He had some kind of mask and he was after Naruto apparently, Kakashi said while Sakura gasped. Well, they didn't get him since he's here. So who saved him? What it you, Sasuke-kun? Sakura asked, and Sasuke shook his head. Naruto narrowed his eyes. Then it was you, Kakashi-sensei? Sakura asked, and Kakashi shook his head with a small frown as both he and Sasuke could feel Naruto's ki rising ever slowly. Well then, who saved him? Sakura asked, intrigued, while Naruto mumbled. No one saved me. I saved myself, he said, and Sakura leaned over the table. What did you say, Naruto? She asked, and Naruto just stood up from his place and turned to Sakura. I'm not hungry, he replied before he walked away and disappeared into the streets. Sasuke snorted and glared at the wall while Kakashi sighed. He knew why Naruto left. No one liked that word, rescue. For a shinobi it did mean help, and it did mean that you might live, but it also meant that you weren't strong enough to be able to fight an enemy off. Sasuke almost never liked to be rescued, even when he knew the value of teammates. Naruto, just like him, had his pride, and it just took a blow from Sakura's tact. Sakura, Naruto didn't need anyone saving him because he took him down by himself. He stayed alive on his own power. I thought you would also like to know that he did defeat one of the Akatsuki members. Of course that was due to the help of my own mother and Kakashi-san, but that's beside the point. This was a bad idea, Sasuke said as he got up and left. Kakashi then sighed and patted Sakura on the shoulder. Sakura, I'm not going to scold you nor am I going to berate you for what you said. It's sort of like that, but you are still stuck in the past. You never stopped to consider that Naruto could fight them off on his own. He should have given you some hints when he fought me along with you. Naruto was trained by his mother and she's much stronger than me. She's probably on equal footing with Jiraiya-sama if not surpassing him in a few areas. Don't go selling Naruto short. More than likely, by now, and with what he holds, he's stronger than me, Kakashi said with an eye smile while Sakura widened her own emerald-colored eyes. Seriously, Naruto did it by himself? Sakura asked and Kakashi chuckled while he stood to his feet. He wouldn't be under Hinoken if he couldn't do something like that. Don't worry, you didn't hurt him too bad, but you did still hurt him. Remember, it's because of him that Sasuke even came back, Kakashi said before leaving the place. Sakura just sighed and looked at the empty table. It was then that she realized what Naruto had been telling her. They might be back, but they would never be the same. Now she had seen it, only, she wanted them as a team. Kakashi, Naruto and Sasuke, along with Kushina, Yugao, and Makoto, were their own team. There wasn't a place for her there. Naruto, Sasuke, you've left me behind again, Sakura thought to herself before she sighed, stood up, and walked out. Kumogakure, unknown room. Talk. Who sent you? A blonde-haired man shouted at an equally blonde-haired woman with semi-dead eyes. She just stared at him and he stared right back at her. The Kumo shinobi narrowed his eyes before he heard steps descending the stairs behind him as he turned his head to see a very muscular, dark-skinned man right behind him wearing blonde dreads, gold bangle bracelets on each arm. He wore the Raikage's hat over his head while he came up to his subordinate. Has she spoken? He asked and the man next to him quickly saluted his Raikage. Yep, the man in front of him was the Raikage of Kumo and proclaimed to be the fastest man in the world with the Yondaime Hokage's death. No-sama. She hasn't said anything within the past 2 days, the blonde man next to him said and nodded with a sigh of his voice. Shall I continue? He asked and shook his head, obviously not willing to waste resources on this. No, that will be enough. I know this type. She's one of Danzo's men. You won't get anything out of here even if it means death. Besides, I know that there is a seal that would keep her from talking anyway. I know all about his methods, said while she glared at the captive Komachi in front of him. She was still in her Anbu root armor, but all of her weapons were confiscated and so was her mask. Just leaving her rather cute face, but nothing else. So she's a Konoha dog then. I was lucky to knock her out before she took anything. Wait, does that mean that she's from Konoha? I knew their little meeting with us was bound to be this. How dare they? She said, slamming the table before another man right behind her came and patted she on the shoulder. Calm down, she. Didn't you know? Danzo's a missing nin from Konoha now. He's been so for a good 5 or 6 months now. You have nothing to hate from them. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. Although it's a dull one, he said while she snorted and backed away. Whatever, I still don't trust them. Not when they destroyed our chance at an alliance, when they killed our Jonin for no reason at all. And now it's all bullshit because the body where we're buried their little double is gone, she said while aside. Yeah, the Sandaime still hadn't told the truth to his death and now it had fallen to the Yondaime. Well, forget it. Keep her here. Konoha is coming in a week and we will see that they are treated right. Darui, let's go, said while she narrowed his eyes at Komachi before he noticed. He turned one more look and noticed at the edge of her chest, a swirl tattoo. He widened his eyes before he shook his head and walked off. Must have been his imagination. Are you alright? Darui asked, patting his shoulder. She just started at him and nodded while he closed the door behind him. They came through a building and she walked off. He unfurled off a piece of his sleeve and noticed the same swirl mark that he saw on Komachi. It had been more than 7 or 8 months ago. Maybe it was 6. He didn't care anymore. He just wanted to know what this meant and why he was being subjected to this. Yoshi-san, what are you doing all the way out here? She looked up from his wanderings to see 4 sights. A dark-skinned redhead girl, a dark-skinned white-hair boy, a blonde light-skinned girl and a blonde light-skinned boy. Yo Karui, Omoi, Samui, Atsui. What are you guys doing? she asked as he discreetly placed his bandage back over his shoulder, which was something that Samui noticed but didn't comment on it. We just finished our training with Bisama and we're going back home. So Konoha is coming in a week, right? Karui asked, and she nodded his head with a subtle look of contempt in his eyes that not any of them caught. That's right, but if we're lucky then they will leave without much trouble. Now then, I have to get going. See you guys later, she said while the others looked at each other. What's wrong with him? Karui asked while Omoi shook his shoulders. Atsui just blinked and for once, decided to keep his mouth shut as were his sister's orders. Sometimes he was just too much hot to handle. Well anyway, let's going. Karui shouted, running off while Omoi's sweat dropped. Samui sighed and rubbed her shoulders. Honestly, you two are too much for me, she said walking off behind Karui while Omoi and Atsui followed in step. Hokage Gates, 1 week later. Tsunade growled as she tapped her foot impatiently. They were supposed to be there by now. No, scratch that, she was supposed to be there in about 10 minutes to greet the Raikage, but Naruto had just claimed that they could waste time and he had the surefire way of getting them there. Now that she thought about it, Tsunade had no idea how Naruto was planning to do to get them there. Man, how she wished she should have asked. Damn it, where is the brat? Tsunade asked while Kushina, Sasuke, Yuna, Yura, Yuri, Kakashi, Yugao and Makoto gathered around. Everyone was simply waiting for their blonde teammate to come, so they didn't do anything. I swear, I'm gonna knock him a new one when I get my hands on him, Tsunade said while the others chuckled. It was fair of Tsunade to understand that Naruto could teleport them. They didn't tell her cause everyone wanted to see the utter look of pure shock on her face. Instantly, Naruto landed to the ground and Tsunade was more than ready to flat out kill him, but he was their only means of transportation at the moment, not to mention it, but they had to hurry up. Damn it, brat, hurry up. Do whatever you need to and wow me already. I swear if we're not there within 5 minutes then I'm gonna create a new rank below Genin and have you stuck there forever. Tsunade shouted while Naruto nodded. Your wish is my command, Ba-chan, Naruto said as he cracked his knuckles and held out his right hand. He felt the honsho flow through his body while she shouted, Jikuyugami no Jutsu, Naruto shouted and Tsunade watched in awe as the large purplish portal appeared in front of them. However, she didn't have the time to awe at it long before she was pushed through by Naruto while the others followed suit. Border of Kumogakure. She's late. Does she intend to make me wait all this time? I asked with a few of his shinobi present. He growled while Mabui, his assistant, tried to calm him down by telling him that they would be here soon. He just sighed and nodded. I swear, that if she's not here in 10 seconds then, stopped as a large portal appeared in front of him. He widened his eyes and all his shinobi got ready for any kind of assault before they noticed Naruto pushing Tsunade out of the portal. There, Ba-chan, is that fast enough? Naruto asked while Tsunade felt her heart lighten. She then growled and bonked Naruto on the head. Don't fucking scare me like that, brat, she said while Naruto chuckled sheepishly. Right behind him came the others in their Hinokan attire along with Yura, Yuri and Yuna as the portal closed. Sheesh, Tsunade said before she looked up to see A and the rest of his shinobi blinking away in confusion. Tsunade coughed and straightened her clothes. Sorry for any trouble, Raikage Dono. I hope I am not late, Tsunade said before snapped out of his stupor and just nodded. He turned his head to Kushina and the Red Death glared at him. He stared at her as well and the two seemed to be having their own fight for a little bit before they broke apart. You are not late, Hokage Dono. Right on time actually. I would like for us to begin our discussion as soon as possible. My shinobi will see your guardians to their respective places, said and Tsunade nodded with a slight bow as they all walked off. Most of the Kumo shinobi were still confused as to how in less than 5 minutes, Tsunade appeared right in front of them along with a Minato look-alike, but the thing that really scared them all was the Red Death in front of them. They had heard the reports that Kushina was making her debut back as a cage-level shinobi in the new Team Hinokan, but no one believed it until now. They had reports that she had died, so then what was this? Everyone decided to ponder it later as a few shinobi showed Hinokan to their living quarters for the remainder of their stay in Kumo. It was mostly a decent hotel that they were staying at and not crowded at all. Here are your team's rooms. Feel free to walk around the village if you must, a shinobi said before closing the door, leaving Naruto, Yura, Yuri and Kushina together. The three female Uzumaki glared at each other as they saw 2 beds and Naruto sighed. Janken, you three, he said, and with a wave he left them to their own devices. Yeah, they had talked with him about the certain things that week. It had been almost one of the most awkward conversations of Naruto's life. Flashback, 1 week earlier. Sochi, please come over here, Kushina said sweetly while Naruto came down the stairs. He noticed Yura and Yuri sitting on the couch along with Kushina, and he felt his danger senses go off. Maybe it was Kyuubi, the spirits, or his instincts, but he really wanted to run right now. However, Naruto Uzumaki never ran away, and if it was something that he had done, then it would be his fault. Naruto sat down to the padded seat next to Kushina between herself and Yura. Yuri then got up and smiled as she leaned in front of Naruto. You are so wrong, Ni-san. You can't love just one of us, can you? Yuri asked before she smothered his lips, much to his surprise. He quickly glanced to his left and saw his mother's amused face before Yuri quickly disconnected. You really are selfish, Ni-sama, but being yours then you more than make up for it, Yura said as it was her turn to take his lips for her own as she quickly kissed him with more passion that Yuri had tried to do. She swirled her tongue in his mouth while neither Naruto, nor Kyuubi, nor Sanbi knew why he was this lucky. Yura backed away with a small blush before Kushina coughed, getting Naruto's attention. We don't like it, Sochi. You really should only have one, but you're just so cute and handsome. I would never allow this with Minato, but you're so special to me. We all love you. However, we're all you get. No more. Got it? Kushina asked with a glare while Naruto gulped. He nodded fervently while Kushina smiled. Then we are all in agreement. Yuri did it, Yura did it, and I will do it. We'll seal it with a kiss, Kushina said as she quickly smothered her son's lips while Yura and Yuri kissed his 2 cheeks. Naruto couldn't help but get a massive erection from this, and it was something that the 3 noticed. Oh, Ni-san's excited at this, Yuri said while Yura smirked. Kushina chuckled and they glanced back to Naruto while Kushina shook her head. Nope, Ni-chan, none for you. Consider it punishment for toying with our maiden heart's Datbayan, Yuri said as they got up and left. Kyuubi was silent, Sanbi was silent, the spirits were silent, and Naruto was silent. His hair covered his eyes and he heard one of the spirits snicker before he smirked and grabbed his sword. Anyone laugh and I will send you to Shin so fast you won't even blink. That means you too, Kyuubi, Naruto said, and Kyuubi, wisely, stayed silent as he wasn't ready to get himself killed just yet. However, he could feel for Naruto. No guy wanted to be left hanging like that, literally. I swear, I feel like I just made a stupid pact with 3 crazy women. No doubt they are going to live this up as much as possible, Naruto said to himself before he got a grin in his eyes. Alright, if they wanted to play, then he would play as well. Flashback over. Naruto left the hotel and appeared in the streets. He was sort of bored for the most part and he couldn't train like he wanted. This was another person's country and Kumo was already cautious of Konoha as it was. He didn't need to add to it. Hey Naruto-san, where are you going? Yugao asked, leaving as well while Naruto looked at her before smiling. Shrugging, he replied, oh, I was just going to walk around. Wanna come with me? As I see it, you and I have never really been hanging out together. Let's have a start then, Naruto said, and Yugao nodded with a gentle smile as she walked alongside Naruto. The 2 looked at the dozens of shops, stores and trades places happening in front of them, and Naruto turned to Yugao. Nay, Yugao-chan, how come you have never asked me to revive your lover? That Hayate guy? Naruto asked as he hoped that he didn't ruin the mood for her. Yugao stopped walking and contemplated Naruto's words. That's right, she knew of his powers and she could very well get her wish for it, but in some ways she felt she was using Naruto for her own ends. That didn't feel right with her. Well, I appreciate the sentiment, Naruto-san, but I think that Hayate would just be happy with how he lived. Yes, I miss him quite a bit, but I think that it would be a little awkward with how I've grown and he hasn't. Sure, 2 years isn't a lot, but I think it would be best for him. Is that alright? Yugao asked and Naruto nodded. Yeah, no problems here. Just wanted to ask. I mean, I did it for myself, Sasuke, and Kakashi. Only the women on this team don't want anyone revived, huh? Naruto asked and Yugao chuckled before she shrugged her shoulders. The 2 continued to walk away before Naruto felt a pat on his shoulder. He turned and saw no one there before he, secretly, pushed Honsho into his eyes, getting their silver color as he looked behind him again. He noticed 3 spirits frantically pointing towards a building and Naruto narrowed his eyes. They seemed to want him to hurry and Naruto wasn't sure why, but he wanted to go with them, but didn't dare. He couldn't jeopardize this. He would have to look at it later. For now, he just nodded and sent them away while he quickly deactivated his eyes. Yugao saw the look in his eyes and looked back at the building that he had been staring at and glared at it as well before she stayed silent and continued in her observations. The Hinokan pair continued to walk through the village before they came to a large temple. It seemed to be a rather far ways from the village itself and Naruto looked up the huge stairs to see the entrance. Naruto and Yugao turned to each other before both shrugged and started to walk up the stairs. Yo ya fool. Where ya think you goin'? You gotta pay respect before ya go flowin' into da famous B-Sama's house. Yeah, a person said and Naruto looked up only to see someone hop over his head and land to the ground behind him. Who is this guy? Naruto thought aloud. This guy had dark skin just like a majority of Kumo's shinobi. He had a muscular build and he was wearing oval glasses to cover his eyes as well as blonde hair. He also had a tattoo for iron on it. Naruto could feel a bit of power from that seal and glared. He had Kumo's standard flak jacket of one strap over one shoulder style. Naruto could see 7 swords on his back and figured that guy had exceptional kenjutsu. Oh, you is hurtin' me, ya fool. You gotta know who B-Sama is. Here, let him teach you before he beats you. Bakayaro. Kanayaro, he said while Naruto and Yugao sweat dropped before Yugao leaned towards her partner. Naruto, this is Kurabi. He is the guardian of Kumo. He is also the Jinchuriki of the Hachibi, Yugao said while Naruto's eyes shifted. He grinned towards Kurabi and snickered. Looks like his stay in Kumo might just be fun after all. Oh, the woman with the purple hair is right. You could see she is full of sight. Now pay your respects before ya fall before ma, might. B said and Naruto snorted. He was more than ready to pay some kind of respect before 3 kunai stopped him. Yugao glared to the right and everyone noticed 3 people about Naruto's age facing off against them. Konoha, what are you doing here? This area is forbidden, Karui said while Naruto raised an eyebrow. He looked across the landscape of mountains and clouds while he shrugged. Well, sorry about that. I didn't see the word forbidden on any stone entrance. Sorry for that, Naruto said and Karui growled while Samui and Omoi narrowed their eyes. They were all ready to move before they heard their sensei's voice. What are y'all doing? You treatin' the brother from Konoha bad with your foolin'. Stop it right now or you is gonna be booin' Bakayaro. Kanayaro, B said glaring at his 3 apprentices while Karui wanted to retort, but a solid glare from B shut her down. What are you doing out here? Did you want the secrets to B-Sama's strength so that you could try and take his biju? Then you would seal it into one of your own people and then you would wage war on us by destroying our village with the power of the Hachibi. Well, we don't. Omoi stopped his exaggeration as Karui pounded his head to the ground. Shut up. It's nothing like that. No one other than Raikage-sama is stronger than B-sensei, Karui said and Naruto's eyes just gleamed while Yugao sighed. Oh man, he's got that crazy look in his eyes. He always wants to prove someone wrong. This can't be good, Yugao thought to herself. Be cool, Karui, Omoi. It is like he told us. There is no forbidden word over this place so anyone could get lost here. Don't go making assumptions. Please forgive our disrespect, Samui pleaded with a bow before Naruto followed. No, we were wandering. Sorry about that, Dadbeo, Naruto said and Samui just gently accepted the answer as she leaned up. She then turned back to Kurabi and sighed. B-sensei, where were you about to go? We have practice, Samui said and B nodded although it was a bit with reluctance in his movements. He would have preferred to be writing at this time. He then glanced towards Naruto and noticed the sword strapped to his waist. His glasses slightly shined and he nodded to himself. Alright ya fools. Be ready for B has the opponent for ya. Y'all will be fightin' da blonde fool. Yeah, B said while everyone listening widened their eyes. Yugao shook her head while Naruto snickered. Him. What's so special about him? We'll mop the floor with him, Karui said and Naruto's eyes narrowed. He knew as a shinobi, being underestimated meant death, but something about him getting that feeling was insulting. Then there should be no problems. You up ma students against ya. B trailed while Naruto just walked forward. Naruto Uzumaki. And yeah, I'll take them on. I'd like to put the redhead in her place, Datbeo, Naruto said, touching his sword eagerly while Karui fumed. What was that? Karui asked, shouted while she stomped her foot on the ground. She would so take care of this. Then she would fucking show him his place. Yeah, she would so do that. Are you sure you're cool with this? You can back out, Samui said, and Naruto shook his head. Nah, I needed a light workout anyway. Just try to be gentle with me. I bruise easily, Naruto shot back with a smile. Omoi grinned while Samui remained impassive, but show amusement, while Karui was just pissed off to the max. Oh, she would so make this motherfucker pay. Kumo Hotel. Kushina and Yuri pouted as Yuri held up the victory sign with her fingers. The two took one bed and Yuri took the other with Naruto. She was quickly getting settled while there was a knock on the door. Kushina stood up and opened it as she saw Kakashi, Makoto and Sasuke appear with Tsunade right behind Yuna. They filed in and closed the door. Where are Yugao and the brat? Tsunade asked while Kushina shook her head. She really wasn't sure, but if this was urgent then Kushina could always use her Honsho to find her son. It seemed that her Honsho was capable of sensing faraway Honsho traces over a good mile. It had been a useful quality in finding Naruto from time to time, but then again, he always came running to her when it was time to eat or simply have some fun. He was just like that. Great, just when I need him to be present, Tsunade said to herself before shaking her head. She would have to think about him later. What is it? What happened at the meeting? Sasuke asked with his arms folded while Tsunade sighed angrily. Faye, you'd think that that stubborn ass would be more grateful for us to warn him of the threat of the Akatsuki, especially since they had lost one of their Jinchuriki, but he claimed that our reasoning was quite unneeded as they had their own way of handling things. Makes me just want to punch his ass, Tsunade said before calming herself down. Well, you didn't just leave it at that, did you? Makoto asked while Tsunade just stared at her. She then shook her head and sat down while rubbing her temples. No, I didn't, but I think that it might have been better if I did. In order to show how serious I was, I challenged him to a bet, Tsunade said, and everyone glanced towards each other. Great, how much money did you lose? Kushina asked with a roll of her eyes. Tsunade growled before standing back up. I didn't bet money. I bet this alliance. Reikage accepted on the condition that Konoha wins. Our Jinchuriki versus theirs. Naruto against their guardian, Kurabi, Tsunade said, and Kushina just stared blankly. You're going to have my Sochi fight not only the person who could try to fight Minato, but also be a better Jinchuriki than even him? Kushina asked and Tsunade nodded dejectedly. Everyone glanced to each other and Kushina sighed as she leaned against her chair. Oh, this can't be good, Databane. Somewhere hidden. Kuso. 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 Toby shouted as he drenched water over his left arm. He cursed at the top of his voice while Zetsu could only watch on. Obito placed his hand on the table and could still feel the burning. Damn you, Minato. You and your son are going to continue to be a damn headache, Toby said to himself before he glared back to Zetsu. Take it off, he ordered, and Zetsu widened his eyes. He looked at the slightly red hand and noticed a large array of veins going through it. They didn't know that Naruto's power came from Honsho and Honsho could be seeped into the body. However, no mortal could control that power and the burning would never stop. Like an Amaterasu, they couldn't be quenched except by the Shinigami or by Naruto. Either way, Toba's body was screwed if he didn't stop this now. Yeah, but we think you can. Zetsu dodged a cup to his face while the sweat poured from Toba's face. His mask fell to the ground while he instinctively activated his Mangekyo Sharingan to just try and sustain his will. I said do it. Don't argue with me, Toby said. He could never be hit by Naruto again. If he did, then it would be over for him unless he did something now. Zetsu quickly approached the hand and looked over it. The plant man closed his eyes and nodded before the loud cry from Toby echoed through the halls of the base. Make no mistake, he would get the Kyuubi Jinchuriki back for this. He swore it. On that fallen arm of his. Chapter 32. Quote, belief is a wise wager. Granted that faith cannot be proved, what harm will come to you if you gamble on its truth and it proves false? If you gain all. If you lose nothing. Wager, then, without hesitation, that he exists, by Blaise Pascal. Yugao grimaced and quickly pulled Naruto to the side. She asked for a couple of minutes with her teammate, which the recent Kumo shinobi combatants had agreed to. Something of Karui hoping for her to tell the blonde just what kind of fool he was being in challenging them 3-on-1. Karui strapped her sword to her waist and she noticed Omoi tighten his shoes while Samui took a look over a scroll before placing it in her pouch. Everyone seemed ready for anything, and this was no more evident than in Karui as she punched her palm. Alright, when they get back let's kick that bastard's ass to the ground. Underestimating this will cost him, Karui said, getting a hesitant nod from Omoi and Samui. What's wrong? She then proceeded to ask her two weary teammates. Ya fool, don't ya know anything? Blondie is no joke. He's a lot better than your average folk. Hachibi has told me that he is very dangerous. He's not someone to take lightly. Fools, make sure to watch each other's back, or he will take you apart, Kurabi told them, getting a sudden look of withdrawal from Omoi and a rather interested Samui. Karui just growled and looked back to see Yugao and Naruto talking together. I don't see the point. What's so special about his blonde ass anyway? Karui mumbled to herself while she and the others folded their arms to wait for their practice partner. Yugao sat Naruto down and placed her hands on his shoulder. Naruto, are you sure you know what you're doing? You know that this isn't necessary. We're here as diplomats. Kumo and Konoha are at odds with each other as it is. I don't want you doing something that you will regret, Yugao calmly warned. Naruto was all ears for her words of concern and was very much happy to hear them. He glanced back at Karui and the others before a light smile graced his face. Don't worry, Yugao-chan. It's not like we're all going to kill each other. Nothing like that at all. Besides, Ka-chan taught me that some shinobi are able to understand each other through their fighting. If that helps, then I'm all for it. Are you afraid that I'll lose? Don't worry about me. I've got it made, Naruto answered as he walked past Yugao while the female sighed and gently placed her hand to her face, then shook it left and right. It's not you I'm worried about. It's them. You never know how to hold back. If we get in trouble for this, then I can only imagine just how much it will be, Yugao silently said to herself before she and B quickly backed away from the field. B landed near his house and heard a voice. Are you sure about this? The power I feel from that boy. It's more powerful than even Yuki. He doesn't have more than you, but the sum that he does has is more potent than even you, B. Your students are bound to have trouble on their hands, Hachibi stated, and B just kept a small smile. Whether he heard his partner or not was still a question. Naruto took to the center and he noticed Karui grin. You didn't run away. You've got guts at least. And we'll see them soon enough, Karui spoke, getting a glare from Samui and a disgusted face from Omoi. Naruto stared at her impassively and his silence unnerved her slightly. Are you going to talk or are you going to fight? Naruto asked, and Karui just allowed for a smile to come across her face, though it twitched for quite a while. Oh, I'll fight. Just like now, Karui shouted as she charged at Naruto suddenly. Samui and Omoi grumbled as Karui instantly appeared in front of Naruto. Yugao and B paid attention to the fight, and in a blink they saw Naruto quickly block Karui's sword strike to his face. The redhead quickly spun on her heel and sent her opposite foot at his face. Naruto ducked underneath it before he was forced to dodge another sword strike courtesy of Omoi. Karui threw a kunai at the blonde Jinchuriki, causing Naruto to roll across the hard ground. The kunai embedded themselves into said ground while Naruto got to his feet. Karui and Omoi were in awe as Naruto quickly split off in two different directions. He can do seal-less cage bunshin. Samui wondered before she noticed the clone charging at her while the real Naruto kept Karui and Omoi occupied. Samui took a defensive stance. The toe clashed swords against each other and Samui noticed the clone's grin and she had a sense of foreboding. Her sense was definitely founded as she watched the clone backflip, and right behind him was a second clone that sent its sword to her face. Samui dodged, but not without a small cut coming to her face. She swung her legs and managed to sweep the clone's feet before noticing the second coming back at her. Samui was forced against the two and their strength before she was lucky enough to plant a kick to one's face, but to her shock it didn't dispel, instead crashing across the ground. His control is so perfect that he had keep these clones going for more than one hit. B-sensei was right. He's definitely not to be trifled with, Samui thought, and she saw the clone smiled. Now do you see how I fight? It asked, and Samui widened her eyes as she turned back to seeing Karui and Omoi on the far side of the field still fighting with the real Naruto. The blonde kicked Karui into the air, getting a groan of pain from her. She growled while Omoi moved in for the kill. You let your guard down, he said, and Naruto glared behind him before B's eye twitched. Karui gasped, and even Samui was surprised as white chains came from Naruto's back and held Omoi in place. Omoi saw Naruto's devious grin while the blonde chuckled. Is that what you think? Yeah, right. Naruto returned before his chains picked Omoi up and swung him around before he slammed his body against Karui. Naruto was surprised that the two disappeared in blurs of smoke, leaving only logs in their places, and narrowed his eyes. He turned to see Samui still deal with his clones. She didn't seem to be having that much trouble as she was very light on her feet. Naruto considered helping his clones with their fight, but he didn't try it. He also couldn't rely on Yuya, Fujika's, Pakura, Dan or Kimimaro this time. He had to remain as discreet as possible. He didn't like it, but he'd kept his secret to a low as far as other villages know. His own was starting to figure it out. However, that didn't mean that he couldn't try to have some fun. Alright, if you don't face me then I'll draw you out, Naruto shouted, getting Samui to look at him. She noticed Naruto's sword stab the ground and he took a step back. She wanted to try and stop whatever he wanted to do, but his clones were becoming a bother. Raiden. Kamirin no Jutsu, lightning release. Divine lighting field technique, Samui shouted as she kicked one of the clones in the jaw. Naruto watched in fascination as the clone was sent flying in an array of lightning blasts where it dispelled upon hitting a mountain. The blonde narrowed his eyes as the female blonde took the second clone's confusion as an opportunity to intercept Naruto himself. She quickly ran for him before she noticed a white fire appear on Naruto's hands. He touched the ground and Naruto smiled. You might want to run from this, Naruto told her, and Samui could get the feeling that he was right as the ground started to shake. Honsho. Gensha Kirin, power of life. Field dragon blossoming, Naruto shouted at Samui, watched a wave of white fire explode over the field. This fire. Is it the Amaterasu of the Uchiha clan? No, he's not an Uchiha. The flames are white. What is that? Samui thought to herself before she quickly stopped herself and ran in the opposite direction. The flames ran their course over the field and Samui was running out of running space before she decided to jump off the field into the ground below. The fire blazed over the field, getting Yugao to sigh. He really doesn't know how to hold back. I hope they are going to be alright, Yugao said to herself as she watched her teammate have his fight. B wasn't any better. He was watching the fight with a critical eye behind his sunglasses. Oh, those fires are hot. My team needs to get itself together or they are all for naught. Now we'll begin the counter. They will make him look like a flounder. Yeah, B said while the white flames died down. Naruto took a subtle breath. He had to fried his clones, and from its memories he could see that those flames hurt. Behind a mountain near the field, Karui, Omoi and Samui lightly huffed while the redhead of the team. Man, what the fuck is this guy? He's insane, Karui said, more than a little irritated at this new development. We would have had a better shot if you didn't run at him trying to take him out so fast. Because of that we left Samui subjected to his clones. Damn it, B-sensei wasn't kidding. He really could kill us if he wanted to. So Samui, have you thought of anything? Omoi asked while Samui folded her arms. She turned around to see Naruto looking left and right. She thought for a few seconds before turning back to her teammates. We'll be working together now, so we'll go with this, Samui said as Karui and Omoi listened to her plan. The battleground was plain. Nothing was moving, but Naruto could feel the spirits telling him where his playmates were. The blonde just closed his eyes and waited for them all to arrive. He didn't have to wait long though, which was what he found out immediately. He opened his eyes and he noticed the three Chunin all around him. They had him cornered. Nice job making us forget that we were supposed to attack you together. You really split us up, but now your luck is over, Karui grinned, but neither Samui nor Omoi could share in her thoughts. They all jumped together, and if Naruto could be serious then he was sure that he saw their hands blur for an instant as they all shouted. Kumo Ryu Omotegiri, cloud-style front beheading, they all shouted at the same time. Naruto quickly swirled his chains around and they guarded against the assault on his person. Karui and Omoi were surprised to say the least before they saw Naruto's glare. Samui shared the same glare, and before Naruto could see it, he was kicked in the chin, sending him into the air. The blonde grunted and noticed Karui jump after him. He took notice that his sword still in the ground as he hadn't been able to get it in time. Now you're finished. Karui shouted, and Naruto narrowed his eyes before he sighed and gave a smirk. Well, this is as good a time as any, I guess, he mumbled, and Karui noticed the action of Naruto raising his fingers in the air. He quickly snapped them and they noticed a ripple of white honsho leave his body. Kukonugami no Jutsu, Naruto mumbled, and just as he expected, everything stopped around him. The clouds stopped, Karui stopped in midair, the birds stopped their flight. Everything had stopped, except Naruto. The blonde breathed a breath of relief and backflipped to the ground. 5 minutes. That's how much time he had at his disposal to do what he wanted. Naruto looked at the still movements and snorted. Wow, she was really ready to take my head off. This girl is crazy. She's like, Tayuya crazy. Well, whatever. So Kyuubi, what do you think of them? Naruto asked while Kyuubi raised a tired eye at the three in front of him before closing it and scratching his head with his free claw. Meh, you didn't have to waste a jutsu on those three. Hachibi's container is by far the person that you will be scraping against. So what are you going to do? Kyuubi asked while Naruto snickered. Oh, I'll think of something, Naruto said as he took out a scroll and a piece of paper. Let's see these work, Naruto said with a smile on his face. He had used those 5 minutes to write 3 seals and place them around the perimeter. Kyuubi could see what he was doing and snorted. Really? You would use the sealing jutsu that your mother taught you right here? Didn't she tell you to only use this on those who truly deserve it? Kyuubi asked, and Naruto smiled. Dead men tell no tales. Neither do those that don't see what I'm doing in the first place, Naruto responded, and Kyuubi cackled with a nod of his head. Whatever you say, brat, Kyuubi said, and Naruto finished. He quickly stood away from Team Samui and stayed near the far corner of the field. He then released the jutsu. Karui continued to shout before she, Samui and Omoi watched Naruto blur in an orange flash before he disappeared from in front of them. Karui slammed the ground with her sword, getting a crack from it. What the hell just happened? I had him in my sights. He was faster than B-sensei, Karui said in shock. Yugao released the breath that she didn't know she had been holding while B seemed confused. He didn't even see Naruto move, much less get to the opposite side of the field. That was fast. Was that the Hiraishin? Omoi asked while Samui narrowed her eyes. No, it wasn't, but if timed right then it's even faster. Naruto shouted, and the 3 tents then turned to see Naruto looking amused at their confused faces. How the hell did you do that? Karui shouted, and Naruto picked his ears. Not gonna tell ya datbeo, Naruto said simply, and that irked Karui before she, Samui and Omoi continued in their pursuit. They dashed for Naruto, looking to end everything before they heard 2 other voices. Too slow, you 3. It was a fun fight. Now then, bye-bye, 2 Naruto clones said as the 3 touched seals on the ground. Immediately fire blazed from one to the other in a triangle shape while Naruto finished his hand signs. Fuinjutsu. Sanho Fuin, sealing technique. 3 directions seal, Naruto shouted, and the triangle from the seals show up and encased the 3 in light, forbidding their movement. Naruto could very well finish this technique. Oh yeah, this was just the first stage. There were at least 3 more that made it one of the most dangerous Fuinjutsu in the world, also one of the rarest ones. Not even Jiraiya could do this one. Get us out of here. Karui shouted, floating in the air while Samui and Omoi sighed. Man, we totally lost. Now he can do whatever he wants with us. He's just gonna kill me, then he's going to brainwash you 2 to take you home with him, where he'll do this and that to you both. This will lead to a decrease in Kumo's morale to Konoha, and then they'll invade to take us all as slaves. We're finished, Omoi said, getting a glare from Karui and Samui. How the former wanted to hit him at the moment. Well, sorry to disappoint you, but I don't plan on doing that shit. Not really my problem. However, you're right, I could do as I like with all of you, Naruto said, getting Samui and Karui to tense before the blonde shook his head. But I'm not that type of guy. I won. You were great, but that's the end of that, Naruto said, and his clones dispelled, allowing the triangle barrier to fall, letting Samui, Karui and Omoi go. They all sighed and sheathed their swords while Naruto walked to take his own back into its sheath. You were very cool. We have learned a lot from you, Samui said politely with a bow. Omoi bowed also, however Karui huffed and folded her arms. Samui's eyebrow twitched before she grabbed Karui's head and forced a bow from her also. Naruto bowed also, and they all quickly straightened up while B and Yugao took their places. I have one question though. How did you get so fast? Even I would have seen you move, Omoi said, and Naruto just smiled while he shook his head. Sorry. Trade secret. Would have to kill you if I told you, Naruto said, getting a small growl from Karui, but understanding from Samui and Omoi.